After my boyfriend, 22, confessed to cheating on me, I was shattered. I thought this was too good to be true, I wept, but his revealing childhood trauma led to breakthroughs we never expected. As he works on his issues, I wonder, can love truly heal? This is going to be a bit of a long story. I apologize in advance. I have been in a toxic 3-year relationship in the past, which has left me with significant trust issues that I am still working to overcome. When I entered my current 10-month relationship, I was still healing but thought I was prepared for a healthy one. However, I quickly realized that my past baggage was affecting my present relationship. I found myself constantly checking my boyfriend's phone, obsessively searching for signs of betrayal, even though there was no evidence. After some time, he told me I needed to stop, as it was damaging both to him and to myself. That was when I recognized I had a problem and began therapy to address my trust issues and self-sabotaging behavior. I am proud of how far I have come. My boyfriend has noticed and praised my progress, especially since he knew what I had gone through in my previous relationship. He and I took things slow when we first met. During the first 2 months after we met on Hinge, we had no physical intimacy at all, not even a kiss, which helped build trust. I even opened up to him about my past, explaining that I wanted to ensure I was with someone good for the right reasons. Over time, he demonstrated that he cared about me for who I was, not just for my body, which was a refreshing change from my past experiences. Things were going great at first. I felt truly loved and safe for the first time, but I also had this nagging fear of getting hurt again, what we had seemed too good to be true, which I expressed to him. Before I had started therapy, there was a day when I felt so loved by him that I began crying, telling him how scared I was of getting my heart broken again, and being so soon after my previous relationship, I did not think I was healed enough to be in a healthy relationship. After hearing me say this, he started crying and began to have a full-blown anxiety attack, the first of many that I would witness from him. At that point, he had already fallen in love with me, and the thought of me leaving frightened him. Over time, I started noticing signs of trauma in him as well. He struggled to open up about it, often becoming overwhelmed and experiencing anxiety attacks when he attempted to discuss it. I felt in the dark for much of our relationship, unsure of how to help him. At the same time, I encouraged him to make some positive changes for himself, such as cutting down on alcohol, stopping vaping, smoking less marijuana, prioritizing other things over video games, and seeking therapy. However, although he agreed to change, he never followed through. It was all talk and no action, which caused the communication between us to start breaking down. We had a very bad argument at the end of October that ended with me saying, "If you want to break up, I would understand," because I had lied to him about how much time had passed between my previous relationship and when I met him. Saying those words to him, I did not know how much worse that would make the situation in his mind. He started crying harder and told me that was not even a thought in his mind. He never considered breaking up. He asked me, "Do you want to give up on us that easily?" At the time, I did not know, but this argument, among other issues we were having, would spark the downward spiral of our relationship. 2 weeks ago, I succumbed to the urge to look through his phone, even though I had worked hard to stop doing so and learn to trust him. I could not help myself and found evidence that he had been cheating on me. I confronted him, and after initially denying it, he admitted it. He had cheated on me twice with a woman who worked in a store right next to his job, both times after we had been fighting, argument after argument, and had not been intimate for a while. He explained that he had been drinking heavily, which was the case almost every night since we had the big argument in which I had admitted to lying to him, as I previously mentioned. He drank so much that he practically blacked out, which led him to make poor decisions. They had hooked up twice before he knew me, when he first moved to the state and started his new job. He said he was not attracted to her in the slightest, but he was lonely, knew no one in the area, and gave in to her desperation for attention that she displayed when she constantly visited him and flirted with him at work. She continued to do this even after we started dating, despite knowing he had a girlfriend but did not care, and in moments of weakness he succumbed to his demons and her temptation. There was no intimacy at all during any time they were together. Each encounter was quick, and during the 2 times he had hooked up with her while we were dating, he wanted to remain as detached from the reality of the situation as possible and did not let her into his apartment as he had before we were dating. Instead, he restricted the hookup's location to her car in the parking garage of his building complex. He told me he had no idea why he did it. He had not wanted to do it, but he had no control over his actions and was deeply disgusted by what he had done. He even vomited afterward. What followed was an emotional breakdown on both of our parts. He shared that he had severe abandonment issues stemming from his childhood. He tried to explain this trauma to me multiple times throughout our relationship, but every time he attempted to do so, he would break down and have an anxiety attack, as if he was physically unable to speak about that trauma. Finally, after 10 months into our relationship, he was able to open up to me and be vulnerable. It is just unfortunate that it took such a betrayal to do so. From his childhood, he was abandoned and unwanted. He was brought into this world by accident. Neither of his parents wanted to care for him, his family did not pay much attention to him, and his longtime ex before me had cheated on him and stolen his cat. Both of his parents were also serial cheaters, so he grew up believing it was a normal thing for the longest time, and all the people he loved in his life left him. As someone who also has mental health issues, I can understand how much trauma can alter one's thought processes. The 2 times he cheated on me were after his trauma had been triggered by our arguments, decreased intimacy, and led him to sabotage our relationship by cheating. Before this, he had never cheated and always claimed he would never because he felt the pain caused by cheating when he experienced his parents' infidelities, as well as the pain from being cheated on by his ex. However, like me, he thought our relationship and connection were amazing and too good to be true, and he was scared of the heartbreak that would ensue if he poured his entire heart and effort into the relationship, and did what he knew he had to do to be a good boyfriend. He claimed he had purposely not put his all into being a good boyfriend, and doing the things I had asked him to and begged him for because he was scared I would reject and abandon him at his best. Therefore, he was protecting himself by only giving me minimal effort so that if I did leave him, it would hurt him less. He claims that due to his trauma and childhood, his brain convinced him that the only thing to do after all the arguments we were having was to self-sabotage and cheat on me, ruining the relationship by his own hand before I could break up with him of my own accord, thus abandoning him. Despite his betrayal, he assured me he would not do it again and has already returned to therapy, showing up as a better boyfriend. In the 2 weeks since, he has been making a genuine effort to improve, and I have chosen to forgive him and stay. He is showing up for me in ways he had not before, being more open and honest. I believe that by staying and demonstrating that I will not leave, even after he did the worst thing he possibly could to me, I can help him feel secure and begin to heal. However, I also realize that being in a relationship with someone who has deep-rooted abandonment issues can be challenging, and I need advice on how to navigate this going forward. I love him and want to help him heal, but I also want to protect myself from experiencing hurt again. How do I balance supporting him while maintaining my own emotional well-being in this situation? I have never been involved with or known anyone with abandonment issues, so any advice is greatly appreciated. Thank you in advance. He is in therapy now, I am in therapy, and we will be starting couples therapy together as well. I have also read that relationships that reconcile after cheating often end up being stronger than before, and I can honestly see that happening with us. He is practically a different person now. He is open with me, honest, vulnerable, so much better at communication, and already treating me much better. It is unfortunate that it took him cheating on me for this to happen, but he says that this is the wake-up call he needed. Seeing how hurt I was caused him even more pain and gave him the motivation he needed to genuinely want to heal his trauma and become a better person for not only me but himself as well. I have already forgiven him because I understand that he has been through a lot and how hard it is to lack complete control over one's brain and thinking processes. He loves me even more for staying after all of this, and honestly, I think I love him more, although part of me still resents him for cheating on me and hurting me, because he is trusting me to be this vulnerable and to tell me something only his therapist and his parents know. He did not even share this trauma with his long-term ex. She tried to make him, but he refused. He has never been motivated to heal until being with me, and I believe I was put in his life to guide him toward that healing while he was placed in mine to open my heart more and to be forgiving and patient. Story 2. After a wild night, I learned Rocky, my dream come true, was a married man. His uncle texted while we showered, he lied, as I wrestled with guilt and shame. Now I'm left questioning everything, hoping I'm not pregnant. How did I not see the signs? I, a 33-year-old female, have been using dating applications intermittently for several years. Last year, I casually dated Peter, a 31-year-old male who was visiting my country. Shortly after our time together, he traveled to another country. We maintained contact for a month while he was away, but then he returned to his home country. I became infatuated with him, but his actions gradually made me realize he was not what I needed, so I asked him to stop communicating. He called me complicated for wanting him to improve his communication. I had expressed that certain things bothered me and that he had changed since we first met. I wanted to become something more, yet he did not respond with a clear yes or no. Instead, he strung me along and I allowed it until I put a stop to it. After that, I decided to go no contact. During this period, I met other people, traveled, and occasionally experienced depressive episodes where I questioned why I dated him. Then something traumatic happened, prompting me to move to a new town. I had to start from scratch, losing a significant amount of savings, and I put my travel plans on hold. I refrained from dating for several months after moving and deleted all dating applications, but then he messaged me. 9 months after he broke our no contact, the day after Christmas, he informed me that he was back in my country and town where we had met. I could only assume he had messaged me as part of a mass outreach to many girls he had met while in my country. Once again, he played games instead of being direct, apologizing, or offering anything that would convey genuine change to me. I experienced a panic attack on the spot. I replied days later, ending the conversation by telling him not to contact me, while deep down, all I wanted was for him to express that he missed me and wanted to see me. As New Year's approached, I re-downloaded Tinder. I went on a couple of dates before encountering a guy named Rocky, a 40-year-old who resembled Peter, another tourist. I prefer long-term dating and avoid polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, open relationships, and short-term flings. Still, I was intrigued because he had those tags in his profile. My libido had been heightened since Peter's message, so I swiped right on Rocky. We matched almost immediately, and he quickly asked about my plans for the night. Though I was busy, I mentioned I could meet him the following day. He attempted to be coy about our meeting, but I insisted he clarify what he wanted the meeting to entail. I was hoping for a hookup after 7 months of complete celibacy. When I date, I do not allow for intimacy or touch until exclusivity has been confirmed. However, I did not find Rocky to be entirely my type, especially after Peter and their resemblance. I messaged Rocky the following night after I was free. He took longer than I would have preferred to reply, thinking I was going directly to his hotel. I had asked him to meet earlier and he had agreed. I told him where and when to meet and he said he was on his way out. He asked for my number, but then he provided it incorrectly and seemed to delete his Tinder account. After 5 minutes had passed, I was already walking away from the meeting point when he messaged me. His contact showed a different name than his Tinder profile. When I questioned him about both issues, he offered some excuse. I felt uneasy about the exchange but had dressed up and was very turned on as many passers-by stared at me on the street. He was still going to make me wait as he was not yet out of his hotel and he would pick me up in another 20 minutes. He called to reassure me that he was not a catfish, and then he finally arrived. I was shocked and cold upon seeing him as he looked remarkably like Peter, but the spark was missing. His voice was deep, but without the accent. Was his resemblance genuine or was my mind playing tricks? We took a cab to not waste more time, heading straight to his hotel. He kept talking about himself and tried to engage in small talk, but I was distant and responded with short answers. Upon reaching his hotel, he expected me to exit the cab, but then I just sat there, leading him to realize he needed to open the door. He apologized and jumped out to do so. As we walked through the lobby, I expected security to stop me and request identification or payment for visiting, but fortunately that did not happen. On our way to his room, he made a joke about having to drag out an elderly uncle who was asleep in one of the beds. It turned out he was not joking, and Rocky proceeded to wake the man up, prompting me to step outside the room and ask him to follow me to talk. I addressed the situation, explaining that it was unacceptable for him to host someone since the man was elderly and it was late for him to be going anywhere. Rocky then asked if I wanted to go somewhere else, to which I agreed but suggested checking for another room since it would be easier. We returned to the lobby and they had an available room. However, he did not have a card on file despite claiming earlier that he did. The room was registered under his uncle's name and the card he previously used did not go through. He stated he had more cards in the room, but on the way back I halted him asking, "Are there more family members in the hotel?" He replied, "No." I inquired, "Are you married?" And he said no. I then asked, "Are you polyamorous and partnered?" He also said no. I added that if the card did not go through, I would be calling it a night, as I had already waited too long and he looked a lot like my much younger ex. I mentioned that I didn't know if that was good or bad but complimented his taste because I believed my ex was attractive. He apologized for the wait and the various hiccups, and he acknowledged the issue with the card, agreeing to put me in a cab. He returned and the card went through. He glanced at my identification when I handed it back, and we proceeded to the room. As he talked, he mentioned many things that did not align, like scars on his body, accidents, dates of injury, and what he was doing at those times. I do not typically like smokers, but he had a lighter and a vape. He admitted to using marijuana and had a Stanley cup full of beer that he claimed he had been drinking all day. I was already in the room when all of this came to light. I asked him to shower before we proceeded, and he obliged. We delighted in each other, showering a couple of times together between sessions, using every towel and sheet in the room. We stayed awake all night, resting in each other's arms, conversing, kissing, caressing, and laughing during breaks before starting all over again. He was dedicated to fulfilling my every command and desire until we reached completion multiple times. In the morning, after sleeping a bit while lying next to him feeling sore and tired, he grabbed his phone and read text messages from his uncle and others. He was monitoring a woman's location. When I woke up, he mentioned that his uncle had texted him angrily because he still had the card he used to pay for the room and could not get breakfast. I got up, showered, and dressed to leave. Everything ached and I felt sore. He gave me money for my taxi, which made me uncomfortable, and he walked me out to the lobby, so I decided to take the bus instead. I did not say much. I urged him to hurry with the card for his uncle who needed food. He kissed me goodbye on the lips and told me to text him while I crossed the street. I informed my friend who had tracked my location and knew my whereabouts throughout the night. She found him and his wife of 8 years on social media, revealing that most of what he told me was false, half-truths, or omissions. I did not respond to him, but he activated his Tinder account that same day because he appeared in my matches. Initially, he claimed he would be leaving after Valentine's Day weekend. On Valentine's Day afternoon, I messaged him since he had not reached out to me and had changed his profile to looking for new friends days before I messaged. I received a rude response by evening and was blocked immediately. On Tinder, his location changed to where his home country was. I confronted him on Tinder and hours later he replied that he said nothing, claiming it was his uncle who deleted everything out of jealousy when he grabbed his phone while in the shower. I told him I knew the truth, asserting there was no point in lying to me. I did not mention marriage but asked if she knew. He apologized for the drama and assured me he was clean and that it was his uncle who messaged and deleted the texts. I hope I am not pregnant or unwell. It was my week off the pill. I had never engaged in unprotected activity with someone prior to him and do not understand why I felt compelled to do so with him after our first encounter. I'm very ashamed, angry, sad, and intrigued by his wife, who is incredibly beautiful. I cannot believe someone like her would allow something like this. I do not think they're polyamorous or in an ethical non-monogamous relationship. I question everything now, and the guilt of making the choices I did despite all the warning signs is overwhelming. The guilt of enjoying his company and everything that transpired in that room, which no man has ever done with me before, is even worse. I apologize, M, if you are unaware of his actions. You do not deserve this. In summary, I, a 33-year-old female, engaged in a sexual encounter with a 40-year-old male who denied being married, only to later discover he has been married for 8 years. Story 3. I discovered my ex was sexting a 16-year-old while we mourned my brother's funeral together. I can't wait to F you was his text while I was asleep beside him. 5 years later, the betrayal still haunts me. How do you trust again after such darkness? To provide some context, I dated this man for 3.5 years before a considerable amount of information came to light that ultimately prompted me to end our relationship. I was completely unaware of any of this until years later into the relationship. Backstory: this man and I went on our first date in November 2019. I was 19 at the time we met. We connected very well and things began to progress rapidly between us. Within 2 weeks of dating and seeing each other, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He came to my door with gifts and in the card wrote, "Will you be my girlfriend?" To which I replied yes. This was the first time I had ever been spoiled by a man and treated particularly well, or so I believed. I always assumed it was common knowledge that when you make a relationship official with someone, loyalty begins immediately. Clearly, this was not the case for him. This man was never loyal from the start, but I was unaware of it. He also claimed to be a virgin waiting for marriage, which I later found out was a complete lie. It turns out he lied about many things. Shortly after we began dating, I returned home from college for winter break, and we did not see each other at all during that break because I lived quite far from campus. However, we would FaceTime and talk every day. During this first month of dating, a tragedy occurred and my brother passed away. I informed my new boyfriend about this and he said he would attend my brother's funeral to support me. He came and we booked a hotel together because many family members were already staying at my parents' house. Since he told me he was a virgin waiting for marriage while I was not, I did not want to pressure him into anything. However, he was not a virgin waiting for marriage. He had been with approximately 7 different partners, and I still do not understand why he would lie about that. Unbeknownst to me, that same night while I slept in his arms at the hotel, he was texting a 16-year-old girl to arrange a meeting for sex. He was literally engaging in explicit conversations with her while I was asleep beside him, which is repulsive. The next day we were at my brother's funeral, and this was when he began searching for albums with that girl. They selected one and he texted her, "I'm just thinking about how I can't wait to have sex with you." Yes, he wrote that in all capital letters. You might be wondering how I discovered all of this. Well, years into the relationship, I received a "Hey girly" direct message from one of the girlfriends of a man my ex played video games with. She essentially told me that he had been boasting to all of his friends on a Discord call about how he had cheated on me multiple times with various girls and perceived it as a bragging point because I had never found out. So I invited him to spend the night, and while he was asleep I conducted a deep dive through his phone. I accessed his Snapchat, unblocked all the girls he had previously blocked, and that is when all the messages appeared. I found the messages with the girl who was 16 at the time, and when I looked at the timestamps, I saw he had sent her those texts about the album and how he could not wait to meet up with her at the same time he was attending my brother's funeral with me. When I discovered this information, it shattered me completely, and I broke up with him immediately. He was also paying random women for explicit content and offered another girl $300 to have sex with him, which she declined. I ended the relationship in April 2023, and now it is March 2025. I cannot seem to move on from it. Even though it occurred 5 years ago in January 2020, I find myself crying in the middle of the night about it from time to time. I sometimes cry at my desk at work. It has really affected me, and I do not know how I will ever move past it. It is one thing to cheat in general, which I feel I could eventually overcome. However, to cheat on someone at their sibling's funeral and to treat someone in a relationship this way is profoundly sick, twisted, and disturbing. If he did not want to be with me, he should have simply ended things. He did not have to cheat and put me through that traumatic experience. I remember during that time, while I was mourning the loss of my brother, my ex would yell at me for crying and told me I cried too much, which he found annoying. I was so fixated on how well he treated me during those first 2 weeks of bliss that I was constantly waiting for that version of him to reemerge, which it did when he ended things with that girl without my knowledge. He was great for a few years during the relationship, but then he began acting strangely again, and subsequently, a girl direct messaged me to warn me about it. I want to move past this, but I do not think I ever can because it involves the death of a family member. How do I even begin to date again after experiencing something like this? There are truly some evil, sick individuals in this world who disguise themselves as romantic, chivalrous people.